Jacob, I wanted to ask you something. The just switching topics here because I believe someone mentioned if we say something, you'd be a terrorist. I want to talk about the legislation, the criminal justice in Ireland, the Incitement to Violence or Hatred and Hate Offences Act. That's a mouthful there, but it's been being pushed along, criminalizing speech, thought, and it's a huge dividing line among Ireland's leaders and many people. The bill is making its way through Parliament already, winning approval last month, 110 to 14. So you can see how popular it is. There's no doubt the Prime Minister of Ireland is it's in favor of it. He's pushed it along. But let's talk about that for a moment, because it literally cuts at the very freedom of speech in Ireland in a way that this is about as radical as any European Union country. And the language will help enforce this woke agenda increasingly. The Prime Minister is gay, and now he's using it as a way to present this as an option that if someone speaks against another group and they deem it hateful, they can go after you for storing content on your phone, on your laptop, on your bookshelves. Basically $5,400 or a year or 2 years in prison, actually. And all they need is a warrant, which is easy to get. In this case, it's just an assumption. You're presuming that somebody has hatred, and all you have to do is a police officer has to swear an oath that they will be reasonable and responsible. And there you have it. They'll be in your house. Under the new definition, hate crimes are going to explode in Ireland. It's already doing that. Jacob, your family's from there. You know it quite well.
Yes.
How in the world did this happen in Ireland?
Let me preface my response by pointing something out. The way the mainstream media and the political hacks operate is because Barack Obama is half black. If you criticize his policies, therefore you're a racist because he's black. If you don't like Hillary Clinton's policies, you are therefore a misogynist because she's a woman. Okay. If you criticize George Soros, you're an anti-Semite. There's people saying that. Absurd. Despite the fact so many of his biggest opponents are Jews. Okay. When I speak about Israel critically, I speak as a supporter of Israel. My wife and children my family of Israeli Jews. Okay. I'm pro-Zionist, I'm pro-Israel, I'm pro-Jewish, I'm philo-Semitic. When I speak critically of Israel or of what's happening in Judaism, it's not as an enemy, it is as a heartbroken friend. Well, Ireland is the same. My mother's family is from Donegal and Cork. I was raised up Irish Republican, radically, almost I was not anti-British, but my mother was. And that was the way it was, pro-IRA, this kind of thing.
Wow.
You have to understand the Irish Dáil, which is their parliament, is the biggest joke in the world. To begin with, there's no left wing and there's no right wing. It's not about liberal and conservative. It goes back to those who were pro-treaty and anti-treaty, with Michael Collins and Edmund de Valera, who wanted to make a treaty with the British and who didn't over the 6 counties. So it's not about left and right. It's about something that happened in the 1920s called the plenipotentate. It's absolutely absurd. Their political definitions were not founded upon a right wing and a left wing per se. It was not about that. It was Fine Gael and Fine Gael. I say Fine be somebody to better to vote for. That was the beginning of it. Secondly, the ridiculous hypocrisy you see in Ireland. What they do is they will take a census, a poll, and they'll ask very broad questions. Do you believe in discrimination? Do you believe we should be against it? Yes. Oh, most people want to be against discrimination, but they don't necessarily have the same view of discrimination as the public do. Politicians define it and say we have a public backing for this. Another thing they do in Ireland, because the Dáil is not really serious, is they will try to rule by referendum, by giving the public a vote, directly deciding issues. A lot of this has to do with Irish membership in Europe, in the EU and so forth. Okay. So that seems like a good idea. You're circumventing a corrupt parliament by going directly to the people, except that when the referendum, the vote didn't go the way the people wanted, they would demand a second referendum and a third, and they would keep getting referendum after referendum until they finally got what the result that the politicians wanted. They tried to do this in Britain with Brexit, by the way, but that same kind of game. So Irish politics are a politically and ideologically bankrupt joke, and they always have been. What you have had is a false social conservatism that came from Roman Catholicism. But the Roman Catholic Church and its influence on Ireland, particularly on the present generation, is so bankrupt. The Roman Catholic Church is so morally bankrupt in Ireland and has lost so much credibility because of the widespread pedophilia, much of it of a homosexual nature and a lesbian nature among nuns, that the Roman Catholic Church has no moral credibility anymore. So there's no moral conservatism that anybody's going to pay any attention to. There's nothing stopping it. There's no political right per se, and there's no religious influence, which was Roman Catholicism. It's just not there. Protestantism exists, but it's much smaller, and it's identified with unionism. It's identified in the mind of the Irish voters and people with British colonialism. So that's how. There's nothing stopping it. Vradikar himself is a they call the prime minister the Taoiseach, and then they have a president. Vradikar himself is half Hindu. He's only half Irish.
Oh, wow.
And he is a raging homosexual. Ireland was the first country in the world to vote for a homosexual prime minister. It was the first country in Europe, to vote for outspokenly and actively homosexual prime minister. This is Ireland. Now, look at these laws. The problem is it's vague, not well-defined. What is hate speech?
That's
It
right.
could just be somebody's opinion as to what hate speech is. Warrants can be issued on the basis of mere suspicion.
That's right. That's right.
On mere suspicion. Ireland is the first country in Europe to throw democracy out the window headlong. Other countries have done it, but Ireland does it headlong. Ireland has never really been democratic. Either the Roman Church Rome ruled Ireland by proxy through a place called Maynooth, or it was ruled by the British via Stormont and Belfast. Ireland has never really been all that democratic to begin with. It does not have a strong democratic tradition. So, and then you've got the violent aspects and parties like Sinn Féin. It's never really been a serious example of constitutional democracy anyway. So that is a good place for the EU to begin.
Yeah.
Once you get the precedent of these laws established in Ireland, if the European Court upholds it, if it's challenged, that's it. Other countries will be pressured to follow the same legislation or adopt the same kind of legislation as you have in Ireland. It's about setting precedent within the EU. It's about setting precedent within the EU. That's what it's about.
Yeah, and it deals with sexual pronouns and things like that.
Yes.
It deals with racism in terms of like calling maybe an immigrant or somebody that's coming illegally. Last year, there was a teacher named Enoch Burke.
Yes, he was Protestant. With a name like Enoch Burke, that tells you he's a Protestant. In Ireland, they can know by your name if you're a Catholic.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Because of his Christian faith, he would not call a student, he's a teacher, a student by their preferred pronoun. So he was jailed. He was jailed in contempt of court, solitary confinement. He was, of course, he was suspended by the school. He was in a Dublin prison for 4 months. And then just recently, the Ireland Higher Court ruled in favor of the school, saying it was their right to suspend him because he was upholding his Christian beliefs.
Yes.
He'd done nothing wrong, except for he was just simply upholding Christian beliefs and not calling that student by their preferred pronoun. This is crazy, Jake. I mean, this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning.